This video follows up on the previous video I did on the kind of sentimental things about the sailboat I call Entropy. And now I'm going to go over all the projects that we did. Some are very major. And then there's a myriad of small projects that we completed. And the broker has a complete list of everything, because I'm not going to list the minor things that we did to the boat. Okay, I'm just going to go click, click, click each thing, just a few seconds each. So this is not going to be boring. We'll get it over quite rapidly, and then you'll see all the different things that we restored on Entropy. A few years ago, we took it out probably 5 years ago, and we got out to sea and realized that the floating compass, that the fluid was gone. So we actually sent it in the manufacturer and had that completely rebuilt and had the fluid restored. About 2 years ago, we had the boat hauled out and sanded it down and repaired some. There were little tiny blisters on it, and we actually took the blisters off. We were thinking we had to go through the boat and take blisters off, and then we found underneath it that the blisters were only in the paint and they're very minor. And so we were informed that this was not structure and it would be a waste of money to go through the trouble of removing all of them. So we sanded it down and had it painted, and that was quite a bit of work. This is what the boat looked like after we got done, and it looked very good. Here's what the paint job looked when we finished it 2 years ago. About 6 months ago, I had the boat hauled out and did some work on, we stepped the mizzen mast to put electronics in it, and also at the same time we replaced the prop seal on the boat. So at the same time the prop seal was done, by mistake, the workers at the boatyard repainted the bottom after it had only been painted for, I think it was 2 years. So now there's 3 coats and 4 coats on that bottom, which will make it last at least 5 more years. I think it was about 5 years ago that the batteries were completely replaced. As far as I know, those are in pretty good shape. My wife and I have been living on this boat as of 3 years ago. Previous to that, we lived on the boat for about 10 years. And so we're dockside most of the time. So we took the Lightning hot water heater out and put a dockside stainless steel hot water heater in so that we could take a shower on the boat. And that actually is pretty darn new. Well, the big job on this, about 2 years ago, we finished, but it took me almost a year. We completely went over the deck. There are micro cracks, and I went through with a little grinder and took out all the cracks and filled them with epoxy. And then we used Perfection, which is a 2-stage epoxy. Very difficult to work with. And this part of the boat, the bow, at least got 9 coats of this epoxy. And I think it turned out really well. So that should last for many, many years. The main window hatches on the deck were replaced about 6 or 7 years ago, as the windows were getting old and they were leaking. And so these are all brand new and stainless steel, and they don't leak right now. About 2 years ago, we had the boat surveyed, and one of the criticisms was that the lifelines had a plastic coating on them that was cracked. And so I replaced them all with stainless steel, and they look really good and they're ready to go. Another criticism by the surveyor is that the windows in the salon, there are 4 of them, as you can see, were so old that they turned yellow and couldn't see through them. So a great amount of work. Those were replaced with brand new windows with tin in them. So those are very good. Another task that wasn't very exciting to do, and very hard to do, but we removed all the fuel from the fuel tanks and then cleaned them, because I've had the boat over 20 years, and so there was gummy stuff down in the bottom that was preventing fuel from going out of the one of the 2 35-gallon tanks. So that was completely cleaned out, and so those the fuel replaced, was polished, and the tanks are full right now and ready to go. Of course, the filters have been changed, and The fuel line in line has a moisture separator. In fact, there's two of them. We switch them back and forth, and there's filters inside those which have been replaced as well. Okay, so the heat exchanger had very micro leakage in it, and this was taken apart. Time we had the fuel injector had to be replaced, and so this had to be taken apart. So the mechanic that did it noticed that these need to be rebuilt. So those were rebuilt about 2 years ago. Here's the fuel injector, and it was leaking, so this was completely taken apart, and all the little gaskets were replaced, and it's been working perfectly the last 2 years. One of the problems I've had almost from day one for most of the time I had the sailboat was trying to engage the autopilot, but trying to repair it just was impossible to get to it to repair it. So I put a hatch in the cockpit so I'd have access to that. And when I went down there to see what was wrong, it was a very simple thing. That the angle of the cable was just a little off, so it provided tension to the spring so it wouldn't automatically pop in. And so it took 10 minutes to fix it, and now the thing operates perfectly. Plus, now I have access to that part of the boat. When we were evaluating the autopilot, I called the company, and they had an upgrade, and it was like a card that could be placed into the hardware. So I sent it off, and they replaced the card in there to update the autopilot. So even though it's an old unit, the insides are brand new. This is the autopilot, and it's called an Alpha 3000, and it's a particularly good uh, autopilot because it's got a screw drive to it, which makes it very strong. The rudder is very large, and it's actually part of the keel, and the rest of the keel is a racing style keel, which is the only one of its size that has the racing keel, and it's very fast. And the rudder is part of that keel, which allows us to have more speed and be able to cut the angle when you're going upwind, and works very good. So I wanted to keep this particular autopilot and not do the automatic with the rest of the system. The access hatch, I've got pointed to it right behind the helm, and that's you actually stand on it, but it's very strong, and so that gives you access to that part of the underside or underneath that part of the boat. About 2 months ago, I replaced the impeller, which is the pump that runs through the heat exchanger and keeps the engine cool. That's brand new. The mesh pocket storage bags for the lines are completely replaced and brand new. Before I started the paint job on the deck, because it's a two-stage epoxy, I needed to cover the boat. So I personally sewed this cover for the boat and designed it to fit it perfectly. Plus, you can step on the boat and go under the cover. So when it's raining, you can pretty much get in there, and at least dockside, it has like a room in the cockpit. That's where I used to smoke my cigars. And so this cover has made a liveaboard very nice if you wanted to use it for. Also, the bilge pump was replaced about 5 years ago. 23 years ago, when I first bought this boat, I had to mass stepped and put in the latest electronics, which was analog at the time, but was the best you could buy at the time. And so about a year ago, I replaced that with all the digital. It's a Garmin GPS map plotter network, and with radar, wind direction, and speed transponder installed at the top of the mizzen mast. And also there's a forward pointing depth finder, and it's all integrated into this circuit. Also at the same time, I stepped the mast, replaced the electronics. We put this fixed wind direction. The other one had lost one of the little indicator arms, and so it's been that way for many years, but now there's brand new physical wind direction. And I mentioned before that when we hauled out the boat, we replaced the prop seal. The prop seal I had was there for 23 years, and as far as I know, the previous owner, hadn't replaced it either. So the seal that was there lasted at least 25 to 30 years. So this is brand new. It should last. If it lasts like the last one, it'll last for 20 years. Many years ago, especially one trip to Catalina, the boat wouldn't start. So we had to have it towed and couldn't figure out what was wrong. And it turned out to be the wiring to the key was a little bit loose. So we had the wiring directly from the key to the starter. So we've never had another trouble with it. And then about a year ago, the kill switch stopped working. So that's a brand new kill switch. And also the solenoid was replaced as well. The sink that came with the boat was like the two stainless steel sinks were both too small to do anything. And my wife insisted I put a nice stainless steel sink, which she really likes and enjoys. So that's finished. My wife is a clean freak. So when she moved onto the boat with me 10 years ago, she made me replace the toilet. And then also, probably about 2 years ago, we replaced it again. And also at the same time, we replaced the pump that you see there. So the toilet mechanism, this is one of the best toilet mechanisms for a boat I think they're out there. Works very good. Also about a year ago, we replaced the teak foldable table in the cockpit, and that it's nice and um, looks brand new. It is brand new. So here's a bench on the port side of the salon. There used to be two captain chairs there, but they were very awkward and took up a lot of space. So we replaced it with this wide bench, and I don't know how long it is, but 6 foot person could easily sleep there. But for long range cruising, there's a tremendous amount of storage under there as well. And it's a thick mattress, so it's very comfortable to sleep on as well. The broker has a complete list of some of the other minor things we did, but here's a short list. We added stainless steel solid boom vangs. That was early during a time that I had the sailboat so that the lazy jacks could be loosened while we hoisted the sails. And there's new sail runners on the mizzen. I hoist the sails with a 28-volt right angle drill, which makes hoisting the sails a piece of cake. And also, I stripped the sole and refinished it, and it looks much better than it did before. And I added a new outlet under the cabin table for my computer uses because there's a workstation. I wrote probably 6 books while I was on that boat over the last 10 years. Of course, we replaced all the waste plumbing hoses as well. As far as I know, that's most of the things, but there are so many things about a boat that are minor that we replaced, but the latest inspection showed no issues with this boat whatsoever, and a copy of that can be gotten from the broker. And so you can also contact me, and we can also detail more about this boat. I've really enjoyed this for the last 23 years. So I hope you people like it. So thanks for listening.
Dr. Nordquist is very interested in finding a buyer who will continue to take good care of Entropy and is also willing to negotiate a generous price if satisfied with the buyer's intention. So, contact Ron for more details.